The hot wind brushes against faces, and the intense sunlight troubles the eyes. The air on the road, where perspiration blooms, is tainted with the acrid smoke emitted by cars. Summer has returned to Canada. However, this year's summer feels somewhat different. People are sweating profusely, dogs are panting with their tongues hanging out as they walk, and the earthworms, briefly emerging into the streets, quickly dry up. The hottest summer in the past century is upon us. Today on the UMC Students Podcast, I, Heesoo Kim, will be your navigator as we explore the temperatures in Canada and around the world, along with the factors influencing them and our responses to those factors. Canada is experiencing increasing heat, and 2023 marked the record-breaking year for heat in the country. Unofficially, a hot day in Canada is defined when the day's maximum temperature exceeds 30 degrees. In the British Columbia interior, hot days were far above historic averages. Kamloops recorded 62 hot days in 2023 compared to a historic average of 33. And Lytton, which in 2021 set a new record for the hottest day ever in Canada, topped 30 degrees for 71 days. Canada's hottest temperatures in 2023 occurred during a sweltering and protracted heat wave in the mid-August, when the day's maximum exceeded 40 degrees in 5 locations. Lytton was Canada's hotspot in 2023 at 42.2 degrees on August 15th. We just lived through the hottest year since the record-keeping began more than a century ago, but before too long, 2023 might not stand out as the pinnacle of extreme heat. It's possible that this year may turn out to be hotter still. In March, scientists from the EU's Copernicus Climate Change Service said February 2024 was the hottest February according to records that stretch back to 1940. There are two main reasons why Canada is getting hotter: global warming and El Niño. However, these two are not separate events, but rather phenomena that influence each other. Global warming is the long-term heat of Earth's surface observed since the pre-industrial period due to human activities, primarily fossil fuel burning, which increases heat-trapping greenhouse gas levels in Earth's atmosphere. Since the pre-industrial period, human activities are estimated to have increased Earth's global average temperature by about 1 degree Celsius, a number that is currently increasing by more than 0.2 degrees Celsius per decade. The current warming trend is unequivocally the result of human activity since the 1950s and is proceeding at an unprecedented rate over millennia. The Southern Oscillation, which includes the phases of neutral, El Niño, and La Niña, is a meteorological phenomenon that cyclically repeats in 3 stages. Both El Niño and La Niña require specific changes in both oceanic and atmospheric conditions to occur. Typically, during normal conditions, the Humboldt Current flows northward along the coast of the South American continent, carrying cold waters from the Antarctic Ocean toward the equator, where it merges with upwelling seawater in the Peruvian coastal area, enhancing its effects. Trade winds blow along the equator, forming oceanic currents in the eastern Pacific, and as water moves away from the eastern Pacific, upwelling occurs to compensate, resulting in cooler surface temperatures. The cold water flowing along the currents gradually warms as it moves along the equator, receiving solar heat. Consequently, sea surface temperatures in the Eastern Pacific are approximately 8 to 10 degrees higher than those in the Western Pacific. The warm ocean promotes convection, leading to cloud formation and precipitation. During El Niño events, cold water in the Eastern Pacific diminishes, leading to warmer than average sea surface temperatures in the Central and Eastern Pacific. El Niño typically lasts for about a year and temporarily increases the average surface temperature of the Earth, while La Niña has the opposite effect, decreasing the average surface temperature. Although longer observations are needed to observe changes in the Southern Oscillation, studies over the past few decades have shown an increase in the frequency of El Niño events and a decrease in the frequency of La Niña events. According to research based on historical records, recent changes in the El Niño phenomenon are attributed to global warming. For example, one study found that, apart from the long-term increasing trend observed in the Southern Oscillation, the variability of the Southern Oscillation observed over the past 50 years has increased by about 60%. Global warming, also known as climate change in broader terms, results in more than just an increase in the Earth's surface temperature. Climate change expands deserts, making heat waves and wildfires more common, exacerbates storms, droughts, floods, and other extreme weather events. Additionally, climate change intensifies Arctic warming, melting permafrost, retreating glaciers, and reducing sea ice. Furthermore, coral reefs and many species are migrating or facing extinction due to rapid environmental changes in the Arctic. The sudden large-scale wildfires, heat waves, and floods that struck Canada in 2023 were just small warnings handed out by climate change. 2023 was not only a record hot year for Canada, but also globally the warmest year on record since regular tracking of global warming began, with a 1.48 degrees increase. There are multiple causes of climate change, but the primary cause is human activity. Since the Industrial Revolution, humans have been constantly consuming vast amounts of fossil fuels. This has significantly increased the emissions of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, leading to acid rain and the greenhouse effect, which in turn has resulted in ocean acidification and global warming. The World Meteorological Organization estimates that from 2023 to 2027, there is a 66% probability that the Earth's temperature will exceed a warming of 1.5 degrees compared to pre-industrial levels for at least 1 year. As global warming levels increase, the risk of crossing tipping points where specific key impacts become unavoidable, even if temperatures return to previous states, also increases. For example, the Greenland ice sheet is already melting, but it will continue to melt until it completely disappears once global warming reaches between 1.7 degrees to 2.3 degrees. Even if warming later decreases to below 1.5 degrees, much more ice will be lost than if warming had not initially reached the tipping point. While the ice sheet will melt over thousands of years, other tipping points may occur more rapidly, shortening the time for society to respond. The collapse of ocean currents, like the Atlantic Meridional overturning circulation, and the irreversible damage to major ecosystems such as the Amazon rainforest and coral reefs, could unfold within decades. The greatest paradox of climate change is that those who are least responsible for it are often the ones who suffer the most from its effects, the impoverished and developing countries. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. The abundance of our stage from the very beginning is merely a stroke of luck. No living being gets to choose the stage upon which they are born. If we were fortunate enough to born into a prosperous stage, it's only right that, while we act out our lives on that stage, we do not destroy it for the sake of those who are on the same stage, as well as for those who will come after us on our stage. If we continue down this path, there's a chance that neither we nor the next generation will be able to fully enjoy the 7 ages we possess. The only time for change is now. What can we do? What should we do to stop climate change? Here are some guidelines individuals can follow to help halt global warming. First, change a light. Replacing one regular light bulb with a compact fluorescent light bulb will save 150 pounds of carbon dioxide a year. Second, drive less. Walk, bike, carpool, or take mass transit more often. You'll save 1 pound of carbon dioxide for every mile you don't drive. Third, recycle more. You can save 2,400 pounds of carbon dioxide per year by recycling just half of your household waste. Fourth, check your tires. Keeping your tires inflated properly can improve your gas mileage by more than 3%. Every gallon of gasoline saved keeps 20 pounds of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Fifth, use less hot water. It takes a lot of energy to heat water. Use less hot water by taking shorter and cooler showers and washing your clothes in cold or warm instead of hot water. Sixth, avoid products with a lot of packaging. You can save 1,200 pounds of carbon dioxide if you reduce your garbage by 10%. Seventh, adjust your thermostat. Moving your thermostat down just 2 degrees in winter and 2 degrees in summer could save about 2,000 pounds of carbon dioxide a year. Eighth, plant a tree. A single tree will absorb 1 ton of carbon dioxide over its lifetime. Ninth, turn off electronic devices. Simply turning off your television, DVD player, stereo, and computer when you're not using them will save you thousands of pounds of carbon dioxide a year. To cut a long story short, do it like your granny did. The ultimate goal of living sustainably is to live regularly. In addition, individuals can make their voice heard by those in power, whether individually or collectively. Now, let's examine what namely businesses and politicians should do. First, let's look at what you can do if you're a business. First, measure and analyze your greenhouse gas emissions. If you really want to reduce your carbon footprint and impact the environment positively, the first step is to measure your company's greenhouse gas emissions. Measuring and analyzing your greenhouse gas emissions helps you to have clear statistics of approximate amount of emissions your company is releasing to the environment. Second, encourage sustainable commuting. Across the globe, transport usually accounts for about 60% of greenhouse gas emissions. If your company wants to get serious about curbing global warming, you need to be at the forefront of scaling down transport emissions. One way of doing this is to encourage your employees to use transport services that do not emit greenhouse gases. You could also encourage employees to walk to the workplace, cycle, or shift to electric vehicles. Third, reduce wastage in the workplace. To sustainably cut down your emissions, you can ensure that your organization is managed in an environmentally responsible manner. An effective way to do is to ensure that buildings are insulated to the highest standards, as well as built using sustainable materials that are low carbon or recyclable. Fourth, invest in greener equipment and infrastructures. Another way to combat climate change is to choose more environmentally friendly equipment and infrastructures. For example, company vehicles should be upgraded to electric or hybrid models to reduce emissions. Office necessities such as printers, air conditioners, bulbs, and could be swapped for more energy efficient and sustainable equipment where possible. Fifth, reduce your value chain emissions. The value chain emissions include those that are outside the boundaries of your company. Examples include emissions released by your suppliers and sold products. This might actually represent the largest share of your total footprint. Work closely with your suppliers to reduce activities that increase carbon emissions. Also, evaluate suppliers' code of conduct criteria and redesign products that emit greenhouse gases. Both individuals and businesses operate depending on the policies set by the government. Now, what are the actions that the government should take? First, protect and restore key ecosystems. Respect for nature is fundamental. Governments must protect ecosystems key to the fight against climate change. Rivers, wetlands, oceans, forests, and mangroves absorb large quantities of carbon, slowly warming. Mangroves also serve as a barrier against tropical storms, and wetlands absorb excess water from floods, both extreme weather events exacerbated by climate change. Second, support small agricultural producers. According to the FAO, the meat industry is responsible for 15 to 16% of all greenhouse gas emissions, exceeding even those of the transportation sector. In addition, it is the most significant source of water use and contamination in the world. Today, 80% of all agricultural production goes toward feeding animals, not people. the expansion of land for livestock and the crops to feed them is most significant cause of deforestation in the Amazon. Governments can make a difference by supporting small local producers who, unlike large factory farms, employ sustainable practices, care about land restoration, benefit nearby communities, and make animals and crops more resilient to climate change. It's less about everybody becoming vegetarians, but more about supporting who produce our food with a respect for nature. Third, promote green energy. 35% of all global emissions come from energy production. But as countries bet on more development, they are also betting on more energy production. But as countries bet on more development, they are also betting on more energy. While thermoelectric and hydroelectric energies were long considered two the cheapest options, technological developments have allowed us to find better, cheaper, more efficient alternatives. With proper long-term planning, nations can avoid all climate-aggravating energy sources and opt for small wind, solar, geothermal, oceanic, and other projects that adapt to a place's unique characteristics. Fourth, combat short-lived climate pollutants. Carbon dioxide is the most infamous greenhouse gas, since it remains in the atmosphere for centuries, even millennia. Even if we stopped all its emission sources today, the effects of climate change would continue. The good news is that other contaminants exist that contribute to climate change and only last a few days or years in the atmosphere. They are known as short-lived climate pollutants, and they are responsible for 30 to 45% of the emissions that cause global warming. These pollutants include black carbon, methane, ozone, and the hydrofluorocarbons found in refrigerants. Their effective control through national policies and regulations could accelerate the fight against climate change in short term. In addition, because they cause serious air pollution, measures to mitigate them would directly benefit human health. Fifth, bet on adaptation, not just mitigation. In the fight against climate change, work aimed at reducing emissions, stopping their effects, and diminishing future consequences is known as mitigation. It is important. However, some communities are already experiencing tragic consequences due to changes in climate over a short period of time. We also must act to prevent catastrophes, increase resilience, and reduce vulnerability, which is known as adaptation. Projects to mitigate emissions are more attractive financially than those designed for adaptation, which are generally focused on the most vulnerable communities. But it is important to give adaptation the significance it deserves in recognition of the fact that the impacts of climate change are already a grave reality for many. Through such changes, we can prevent climate change. However, looking around, we may find that many people do not take climate change as seriously as they should. Even politicians, who should be the most aware of its severity, are guilty of this. I don't believe it. This is a famous quote from former President Donald Trump of the United States. He served as the 45th President of the United States from 2017 to 2021 and pursued policies that outright denied the existence of climate change. Despite this, he was elected as president through the votes of the people, and the fact that he remains a prominent candidate within the Republican Party sends a clear signal to us. Yes, people want to deny the existence of climate change and global warming. Climate change denial is a form of science denial characterized by rejecting, refusing to acknowledge, disputing, or opposing the scientific consensus of climate change. Those who promote denial often employ rhetorical tactics to create the illusion of a scientific controversy where none exists. Climate change denial encompasses unfounded doubts about the extent to which climate change is caused by human activities, its impact on the environment and human society, and the effectiveness of human actions in adapting to global warming. Their main arguments include the following. First, CO2 is not actually increasing. Second, even if it is, the increase has no impact on the climate since there is no convincing evidence of warming. Third, even there is warming, it is due to natural causes. Fourth, even the warming cannot be explained by natural causes, the human impact is small, and the impact of continued greenhouse gas emissions will be minor. Fifth, even the current and future projected human effects on Earth's climate change are not negligible. The changes are generally going to be good for us. Sixth, whether or not the changes are going to be good for us, humans are very adept by adopting the changes. Besides, it's too late to do anything about it, and a technology fix is bound to come along when we really need it. Why do they don't fear climate change? The impacts and damages caused by climate change, as well as its human-induced nature, are already apparent. In fact, the reason why we don't fear climate change is quite simple. We don't perceive it as risky. According to research by Bruce Schneier, an American cryptographer and computer security expert, people have cognitive biases. Firstly, people tend to perceive rare and spectacular risks as much greater while overlooking everyday and frequent risks. Secondly, people tend to perceive common and familiar objects as less risky and unknown, or unfamiliar objects as much more dangerous and frightening. Thirdly, people feel safer controlling what they believe. They control down what they perceive as uncomfortable. In other words, we act based on feelings rather than objective reality. People actually feel specific and vivid stories are more likely than accurate statistics or well-researched probabilities. Due to these cognitive biases, it is difficult for us to have a vivid awareness of climate change. So what should we do? How can we effectively communicate the warnings of the climate crisis to people? Interestingly, the answer seems to be something that insurance companies already know. Insurance companies motivate people by advertising retirement plans that benefit in the distant future, portraying a positive image of future akin to happy old age. Conversely, advertisements for health insurance to prevent risks in the near future often depict concrete negative images to instill awareness. This leverages people's tendency to act out of hope for events in the distant future and to avoid negative outcomes in the near future. Taking advantage of this, recent environmental campaigns are also shifting direction. Rather than solemnly and seriously addressing environmental issues, they implement programs that naturally involve consumers in environmental protection through product usage. Whether it's making components from eco-friendly materials or turning discarded plastic into board games to encourage people to donate to the cause, the focus is on integrating environmental conservation into everyday activities. Of course, this alone won't bring about significant change. Efforts on national, individual, and global scales are also necessary. However, these messages often fail to make a lasting impression as we've already been inundated with them. People tend to become desensitized to repetitive stimuli. Moreover, due to excessive pressure about the distant future, there's a risk of denying climate change itself. It's time for a shift in approach. Instead of endless warnings, we should accompany people with messages of hope. We have many expectations for the future, many of which are intertwined with the natural environment, whether it's a trip next year or a place we want to live in 10 years. These are all hopes and expectations. To encourage people to participate in preventing climate change by stimulating these dreams, what should we say? What'll you say?